Yes, foreign powers have the moral right to interfere in African affairs. For decades, many African leaders and commentators have decried Western interference in the internal affairs of African states. Yet, a closer look at the continent's political and economic realities reveals a striking contradiction. If African governments willingly depend on foreign aid, loans, and diplomatic approval from the very nations they accuse of meddling, how can they credibly reject those nations' involvement in African matters? Morally and logically, one cannot demand assistance while denying accountability. If African leaders resent external influence, then they should stop soliciting and accepting foreign aid. The principle is simple. Independence cannot coexist with dependency. Take Nigeria, for example. In 2024, the United States provided about $200 million in aid to the country. Yet when American officials condemned the mass killings of Christians by Islamist militants, Nigerian politicians were quick to insist that America must not interfere in our internal affairs. How can a government that accepts foreign taxpayers' money turn around to denounce foreign scrutiny? Such selective morality exposes deep hypocrisy. Ironically, the total foreign aid received by many African countries is often less than the amount stolen by a single or a handful of corrupt politicians in a single year. If African leaders truly wish to safeguard their sovereignty, they must begin by rejecting the financial crutches that erode it. More than 6 decades after independence, many African nations remain dependent on foreign funding to conduct elections, run governments, and respond to humanitarian crises. This persistent reliance often extends to inviting international observers to validate their democratic credentials, an act that subtly undermines national sovereignty. In stark contrast, Morocco's decision to reject conditional aid from France following its devastating earthquakes stood as a rare assertion of self-determination and dignity. Similarly, Burkina Faso's refusal of exploitative foreign loans and aid reflects a growing awareness that genuine independence requires the courage to say no to economic manipulation disguised as assistance. Only through such acts of principled resistance can African states reclaim the power to define their own development paths and challenge the entrenched patterns of neo-colonial interference that continue to shape the continent's destiny. The tragedy of Africa's political landscape lies not only in corruption, but in the continent's failure to uphold dignity and independence. Institutions such as the African Union and regional blocs have consistently failed to hold leaders accountable or uphold collective integrity. Rather than acting as guardians of democracy and good governance, they have too often become sanctuaries for mediocrity, corruption, and self-interest. Instead of using their authority to guide member states away from mounting foreign debts and external independence, these bodies themselves have become recipients of the same imperial aid and influence they ought to resist. In doing so, they compromise their moral authority and reinforce the very structures of dependency that continue to undermine Africa's sovereignty. Until African leaders free themselves from their dependency mindset and develop the moral courage to govern without begging bowls, they have no right to complain about foreign interference. Dependency invites oversight, and those who live off the generosity of others cannot claim to be truly sovereign. Join Diaspoint in addressing leadership challenges that hinder Africa's path to progress. Help amplify Diaspoint's views on real issues by sharing our messages within your network. Together, we can make a meaningful impact on Africa's future. Diaspoint, empowered by Africans in diaspora.